All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to October 21st. Look at this. We're 1 week away from being through 1 month of the fourth quarter. All right. Today, we are very fortunate from the Scottsdale office, our Caroline office. We are fortunate to have Uma. Uma, if you could hit *6 on your phone, it'll unmute you. So *6, not pound, but *6. And just let me know when you've done that.
I did.
There we go. All right. Well, welcome to the show. And, we've got a few people on, but I know you'll hear that sound maybe as more people come on. But give us tell us a little about yourself, maybe how long you've been doing this, a little about your past would be great, please.
Good morning, Rick, and thank you for the gift that it is to be here. My birthday was yesterday.
Happy birthday.
And so thank you. It's been a great weekend, and this is a great opening to this week. I was born and raised on the equator. I am what I like to call Mujer Pacifico, a woman of the Pacific coast. I lived a beautiful life surrounded by very strong women. My grandmother and my mother raised me, and I lived a very beautiful, very simple life. There were I knew no excess as a child. Everything was to the right measure. And the women that raised me did a beautiful job doing that. And so I was around 13 when I moved to New York, and that was Rick, that was the most exciting thing that could have happened to me. To be a New Yorker as a teenager in the 90s was the coolest thing, and it shaped me. Coming from the equator to New York, it was quite a shift, and it was beautiful.
Awesome. Well, how did you like because the equator, the temperature and the weather is pretty consistent. What did you think about New York?
So I was very happy to be reunited with my mother. So nothing could have gone wrong, but it is true. So coming out of Ecuador, where it was always hot and sunny, steamy hot, and coming to New York, and it was the first week. It was that week that kids get off of school for Thanksgiving, and so I got off the airplane. Yes, I got off the airplane, and everything was covered in snow, and I could see my breath. And to me, that was like magic. It still tickles my intellect every time I think about it, because it was just so far outside of what I knew. But that was just the beginning of the very wonderful life that began for us here. It really was beautiful.
Yeah, it reminds me of the story. Like my kids and we would go skiing every weekend, and I remember telling them one time that they said, "Dad, how can we go skiing? There's no snow." I go, "They make snow." They make snow? I go, "Yeah, they actually have machines." And I took them by the mountain, and I showed them. I go, "Look at it. See, they're spraying snow all over." It was like the most magical thing they had ever heard of when I showed them the snowmaking machines. So, I can imagine seeing your breath for the first time, being from Ecuador. Must have been pretty crazy.
Well, and in South America, especially back in those days, the dream was, it didn't matter where you were from in South America, the dream was to land in New York. There's thousands of music written about landing in New York, everything about it. And so I was only 13, and I had no idea what awaited me, but to land into New York City with all the lights and everything that comes along with it, and being in the womb of like a large, enormous city with all the beauty and the culture and the people and the languages and the colors, it was just electrifying.
Wow. Yeah, Ecuador really couldn't be much closer to the equator. It literally is split in half by the line of the equator, the country itself, as I'm looking at my globe right now. So, awesome. Well, since we started there, let's get into it. Tell us a little about your transition from Ecuador to being in the United States. What was that like?
For me, it was, I believe in everything that it's meant to be, and you get it right when it's supposed to come to you, and so you make the best of it. And so I knew no English, but to this day, what remains in me from that huge shift that it was to come from one radically different place onto another was that adjustment happens, and you have to play the game. that there's a beauty about entering new waters and learning quickly, okay, where does the current go and how do I work with the current? Because I believe that everything in life is blessing. No matter how hard, no matter how against what you knew, the name of the game is change, and it's meant to be like that. And so it is on us to get up on it and to make the best of it. And for me, of course, coming immediately from a Spanish-speaking country to an English-speaking country with zero language, I mean, I knew nothing about English. And so it was the 8th grade, PS 99, the school that I went to. And, of course, I looked as different as they come. I moved into a Jewish neighborhood in Brooklyn, which was so cool. But I was very much aware of, okay, I'm totally outside of my element here, and what do I need to do to start to win? And the first thing that I knew right away was the language. I knew nothing. I could understand nothing. Education was not what what it is today, where people try to incorporate different learning methods to help every student thrive. No, it was just like talk, and there I was, and nothing registered. And so immediately I knew, okay, I have to learn the language. It was November. I'm like, okay, if I can just make it to May, then I just study. And by the time I start in September again in high school, I'll be good. And I did. And it was remarkable. And that was just the beginning of a new way of being. And I love the opportunity that we get to always become a new person. I think that's a gift.
That is cool. Well, and with all your different, as you change careers or do different things, which it sounds like you've done recently. So before, and now you're in Arizona, so now you've gone back to almost equator like some days, right? Except for it's totally different as far as the humidity goes. But I mean, temperature-wise, Arizona can be hot. But tell us a little about you decided to get into real estate recently, but what did you do right before real estate? What were you doing as far as work goes?
So I've always been an educator. I'm an extremely curious person. I love learning. And so I was in education, and I love languages. I study languages. And so I wanted to spread that. I love the idea of using your full brain capacity and then pushing it harder. And so to marry that aspiration to grow the brain, I went into education and into teaching languages. And so I had a Montessori school where I taught children how to speak Spanish. I loved it, and I did it because I got married. I have 4 children, and I wanted to be the one that taught my children how to read, because to me, reading, I'm an avid reader. To me, to have a good book in your hand is to be able to explore the world sitting in the comfort of your backyard. And so I wanted to be the one to teach my children how to read, and I did. I taught them all. I taught many countless children how to read. And then I phased out of that. And of course, real estate is just another arm of education. The curriculum changes, but it is an education experience. And so for 6 years, I've been a licensed real estate agent, but I was doing it from the investment side. In the marriage, we owned properties and we grew that. And then we went through COVID, which was the worst time to own properties because nobody was paying rent. I mean, talk about learning. Yeah, it was a hard time. But then and then we sold the properties and went through huge transitions in life, and now I'm back on the other side of it as an agent, completely excited and with a new understanding of what it is to have a home and to own a home. And to start life on the right, with the right choices in your pocket. And so home ownership to me has become almost symbolic of what it is to stand right in the world. And so, and for women especially, I will always, and if we have women listening, I will always tell a woman, listen, the way that you make it in the world, you establish yourself, you grow your gift, you give your gift, you educate people, and you start in real estate. You start early and you start fast. You start with one apartment, you go on to one house, you start building a portfolio. it is when it comes to creating wealth, it is an enormous, generous venue to do that. And when it comes to creating wealth for your generations to come, it's the only thing that makes sense, of course, aside from investing in the way that Mr. Warren Buffett always talks about, right? Buying into American businesses, shares of American business, and real estate is an extension of that.
I totally agree too, and I think that like when I started in the business 39 years ago, we always talked about the American dream, and the American dream was, like you just described, starting with owning your own place. And let's face it, that's not getting easier, is it?
Oh, it's the hardest part. As I was getting ready for this, I looked up your last name, and it said that it's of French origin. Is that true?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so then your family too, immigrants that came here at some point, many generations back, and from everywhere in the world, for as long as I can remember, the dream of coming into this place, which I will always say the United States is a magical place because there's freedom for people to imagine big ideas and to see them grow. And Mr. Buffett always talks about this. And this is the place where we have the freedom and the accessibility to grow big ideas. And everything starts. And I mean, if we talk many presidents back, that was always the dream, to own a piece of the American dream was to have your own property. And it is becoming hard. And especially because it is becoming so difficult, we have to be extremely strategic about how and where to place our resources, to start early and to teach our children to do it early, because we need to do it.
Yes, so true. Yeah, my family's all from France. They moved into Quebec area, and then migrated down through into New Hampshire, and that's how I got here. And I even did the confirmation. What do you call it? The ancestry thing, and just to verify it, and it came out just like that. So yeah, I agree. I think it's the earlier you start, and it's funny you say that, because when I was in college, my second year, that's exactly the mindset I went through. I'm like, I could be working for somebody else, or I could be working for myself. It's going to take me a little while to get it going, but then I don't have to answer to anybody but myself. And I took myself through that process, and I bought my first house at 19 and haven't looked back since then. And it's real estate has ups and downs, just like the stock market, just like anything else. But now properties are so expensive, and with the interest rates that have gone up, and looks like they're starting to come down, when those rates, that's what I'm kind of afraid for and excited for. As the rates come down, I think a lot of the people on the sidelines are going to jump in, and with the inventory being tight, we could go through another appreciation phase. So if you're out there listening today, and I always tell people, if you don't own your primary residence, that's the first place you need to start, and that's so important that you get that done as soon as you can.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing about market conditions, right? We know that this is a pinch and a crunch, and that there's a lot of pressure, but all of life is built around pressure. The way that our planet sits in the cosmos, it's all because of pressure. So pressure is also part of the equation. But now, if we leave ourselves open to just whatever market conditions are, then we're always going to be at the whims of what the market conditions are. And I think to empower people is to come inside yourself and inside your own conditions, right? And what is your life like? What are your spending habits like? How do you discipline yourself so that when the opportunity is there, because the opportunity, it may phase out for a little bit, but it always comes back. And so the right thing to do is to always say, am I ready for the opportunity? Is my pocketbook ready for the opportunity? Am I saving, at least 10%? Am I, putting away 20% to pay my debts? Am I, living within 70% of my income, right? And making the right decisions, because we always have to keep the power within ourselves to do and to react. And to do it wisely, right? To place ourselves in a very strategic position so that we can seize on a good opportunity.
Yes, I agree. So it's obvious to me why you pick real estate. You pick real estate because of the massive, there is no ceiling to what you can do in this business, is there?
Absolutely. And you know, it's funny because as we transition with everything that happened with, you know, the lawsuit and what's going to happen with compensation, you know, this feeling that you talk about, it's so funny because we like to think that the feeling is outside ourselves, but it's a little lie that we tell ourselves, right? And the mistake that we make in telling the little lie is that we take away power that is ours and we put it on every condition that's outside of us. And the truth is, you know, take your power back. The ceiling is not there unless you place the ceiling there. Because it's true, you may not be selling 10 houses. You may only have like 3 or 4 houses to sell, but they're still there. And people are still out there, and people are still having to move and transition. And so there's always opportunity there, but remove the ceiling that is your thinking. Expand. Think differently. Think better. I always go back to right action. Right thinking, right action, right? If your thoughts are in the right wave, then the action lines up to your right thoughts. So I always like to take it all back to, okay, how am I thinking? How am I creating this inside my head? It all starts in your mind.
Yeah. I'm listening to a book right now. It's a live seminar with Bob Proctor, who is Waddles, the gentleman who wrote that book years ago about you know, earning money and increasing your network. Something Waddles, I can't remember his first name, but and it talks about that. You know, or you listen to Tony Robbins. He says, you know, where focus goes, energy flows, and you know, you have to and that's what I'm doing my video on this morning after we do this call is. You have to visualize. You have to see, even if it's hard, like you want to sell a lot of real estate. What does that look like? I want to live in a certain place. What does that look like? I want to be healthy. I want to look a certain way. What does that look like? You can visualize these things. And then I agree with you, even at an unconscious level, we start acting differently, talking differently, right? So you got to do both. You got to do the actions, but you got to, you know, set the mental GPS, I like to call it, every day. As to why you're doing this and where you want to end up. It's kind of important, right?
Yeah, and I love that you bring up books because we cannot excuse ourselves with like I didn't know, or you know, nobody told me, or my mom or my dad didn't. No, as adults we make the decisions that will outline the trajectory of the rest of our lives. And yes, it is true that everything starts with an idea in the mind. And then the vision, and then you have to create a strong vision, right? And the vision in the mind creates this sort of energy, right, that you feel in the body. It's almost like electricity. And that's the powerful emotion that will drive your vision. With that powerful emotion, there's no conviction. With that conviction, there is no vision. And you need your powerful emotion to carry your vision, to fulfill the idea, to materialize in the world. And all of the, you know, all that you need to do to make an idea come true is action. It's work. It's discipline. It's creating that plan. It's creating those goals and sticking to them. But it has to feel alive in your body. It has to, I mean, and that's why visualization has become this huge, you know, this manifestation, all this sort of words that go together. But it is true. You have to see yourself in that place, you know, rehearsing things, talking to your clients, going out there. It has to become so vivid in the mind for it to manifest in the world. It is absolutely true what you say.
I agree. The Science of Getting Rich is the name of that book. It's
I've read it. It's a great book. It is a great book.
Yes.
And to your listeners, I like to recommend. It's a really short one, but it's extremely powerful, especially when it comes to changing your habits, so that you can always have money set aside to invest. It's called The Richest Man in Babylon. Very short book.
Yeah.
Great and powerful book. And so anyone out there looking for something that will motivate them to change their spending habits, it's an easy read, powerful book. Yeah,
and it's a very simple strategy for doing it too, and it's a fable too, so it's kind of cool. It's a good book.
Yeah.
It's a good book. All right, so you've been in real estate for a little while now. You picked it for obvious reasons. What do you see, like, some of the top attributes? Like, if I want to be successful, what are some of the things that I need to do to really take this bull by the horns and be successful in real estate?
You know, I love that you come back to this. And for me, there's only one true North star. There's really only one simple guiding principle, and it applies to real estate and to every aspect of your life, and especially in relationships. And real estate is just an extension of how to build relationships, right? You build a relationship with the customer, you try to get inside their mind, you try to see their vision, their dream, and then you become co-creator with them, and then you help them materialize this thing, right? But going back to that one core guiding principle for me, it's always to give the greater measure. In any exchange that I find myself, anything small, big, medium-sized, whatever, I always try to give the other person the greater measure. Why? It works because people are not expecting that. And so when they receive that from somebody else, it moves them. And I'm really into the idea of getting people to feel things again, right? To extend themselves to help somebody else, not because they want something, but because helping is good. And because we need every bridge that we can build so that we can come back and feel each other's humanity. We need that. We need that so we can feel comfortable in our business exchanges. We need that so we can feel comfortable in our neighborhoods. We need it so that our children can, count on a future that's better and brighter for them. We need people to like people again. And the only way to start building that on solid ground is to always leave the other person with a greater measure. The funny thing is, it's a principle in the universe too. It's a law that the universe works by, that the more you give, you receive 100-fold. It's so funny because in a culture that teaches us to compete and that if I win, you lose, and that I have to take it before you do or I get nothing, which is all a fallacy and it's all a lie. And it's not survival of the fittest, like people say, because Darwin, in fact, what he said was survival of the fit. And what he tried to teach people is that the organism that thrives is the organism that learns to work together, okay, in communion with their environment. It was never survival of the fittest. It became that. But it's not what the teaching was. The teaching was you have to learn how to work in your environment and give to your environment as much or greater than what your environment is given to you. And in doing so, you're always going to be reaching the greater measure, right? You're always going to be evolving because to be in communion with the environment, to be in communion with other people, is learn how to live together. And if I'm making your existence better, then you're making my existence better. And then the universe becomes better because we're all, as we know, energy. We flow outward, right? And so every good action flows out and creates more good action. And every selfish act it becomes contracting, right? And creates more selfishness. So for me, sir, the rule is one and one alone. And that's always to give the greater measure.
I love it. Yeah, and you do that in real estate, it comes back to you because they tell all their friends and family. And let's face it, that's which is kind of interesting if you think about it, because that's your fiduciary responsibility. Right. Anyway, if you think, it put your clients' needs. First off, I agree with you. Secondly, you've heard it called the golden rule. In real estate, it's a fiduciary relationship, which is kind of the same thing from a legal standpoint as well. So all those rules ultimately say pretty much the same thing, don't they?
Yeah. And it's funny that, we've at some point in the evolution of man, we stopped trusting what is the generosity and the kindness that is instilled of us, right, from the Creator. And we had to start writing rules and convincing each other that unless we were given rules, we wouldn't do what is right for the next person, right? And so we have fiduciary obligations, right, that we have to keep. But it is true. It goes back to that intuition inside that tells you, be kind, be generous, be noble in every action. It's always the best way to go. But it is true. It's our responsibility to do that.
Sure is. Awesome. Well, I just want to say, Uma, thank you very much for your time today. This has been extremely awesome. I'm sure, people got a lot out of this, and we'll also be blasting this out everywhere. It'll be on my podcast, which if you have an Apple phone, that's the purple button with the little white microphone. You just touch that app and type in my name, and it comes up. If you have an Android phone, it's on the app called Podbean, Podbean, and it's also on my YouTube channel, Forever, right? So that we'll be blasting that out. You'll see, interesting to see how many views or listens we get to this week. But once again, thank you very much for your time today. I appreciate you.
Thank you. Thank you. It was a great opportunity to be here, and let's do more some other time. Thank you.
You got it, Uma. Thank you. Appreciate it. Bye, everybody. Bye, Uma.
Bye. Thank you.